Hey, how you doing? My name is Toks Aruture. Welcome to my journal entry. I read my journal weekly because I use it to navigate challenges. I use it to deal with obstacles, and when I can't see the way forward, I tend to write what I see, and writing what I see helps me to also see the way around it or the way through it. And so I'm passionate about sharing my life lessons, my business lessons, because I don't want you to go through the challenges that I've had to go through to learn those lessons if you don't need to go through it. It's consider me a shortcut to some life lessons, because all of us are going to have to go through ours. So interestingly enough, I would love to be reading from my journal. This is a notebook that was gifted to me by a beautiful soul, a dear friend of mine, which I was using for business. But then I went on holiday and I forgot my journal on the plane. But I'm going to tell you a lesson that came from there. Probably I may not get to read, because I then had to convert this into my journal pronto while I was on holiday because I needed somewhere to write. So it has quite a lot of lessons in there as well. But one of the areas that I've been learning again, because I learned this lesson last year and even did a 3-part series on the topic of abundance on my podcast last year, but I find that I'm learning again, is abundance. So I'm learning the subject of abundance and the poverty mindset and lack. And now I understand. In the past, I used to worry that when God had taken me through a particular path and taught me a lesson, and I found myself relearning that lesson, I'd be worried and say, clearly I didn't learn it the first time, and that's why I'm going through this challenge just to learn it all over again. But here's what I now know. There are layers and levels to this thing. And so I may have learned at a particular point a level of abundance last year, but since then a lot of growth has happened and I've got to learn new levels of abundance. So this is what I learned when I left my journal on the plane. The 2 things I'm going to pull out of it. The first thing is I noticed that we all have a default reaction to situation, or a default thought process to situations that show up. And those thought processes can become habits. And over time, the more you react in the same way to a similar circumstance, the more habitual it becomes, even when it doesn't make sense for you to have that reaction. So if you have been watching any of my videos, or you know me, or you've read my stuff, or listened to my podcast, you will know that my journal is my best friend, bar none. Like it's where I put my thoughts on. It's precious to me. I gather them, I save them in a beautiful basket at home. So leaving my journal on the plane, where I came off, and when I realized I had forgotten it, I had already left the airport and the plane had moved on to its next destination, because it dropped me in Lagos and moved on somewhere else. My reaction was instant, was like a spark of frustration, just a spark. It was about to turn into a fire. But I stopped myself in time, because I was also learning at that time that I don't necessarily have to follow the path that my impulsive thought is leading me on. So my impulsive thought was, my journal, which would create an impulsive emotion of extreme disappointment, frustration, panic, everything. And that began, there was literally, the spark started, but I didn't follow it. Because now I'm learning to pull back and not have a default reaction to situations. That just because I have always reacted in a certain way, and I have a right to react however I want to, and the emotions that are popping up or coming up, rising up from within, are justified, doesn't mean that I have to go in that direction. So that must have been playing at the back of my mind when I quickly stopped myself from panicking, from getting frustrated. Maybe there's a word called frustrating. There is, ocean. Anyway, from panicking, from being frustrated, and from getting really upset about it. I stopped myself, and the scripture came to mind God works all things out for the good of those who loves him. I've paraphrased that scripture, but everything is working out for my good. What was interesting is while I was flying, I picked up my phone. I've been doing a lot more typing lately because I'm writing a book and I'm now having to deal with the challenge of transcribing much of my writing onto text. So because of that, I'm doing 50% typing and 50% writing so that I can capture stuff in a text format that's ready to be used for the book. And while I was flying, I just felt really, really impressed to type out the most recent lessons in my journal. Thankfully, it was a new one and I'd only been writing for a few days on it. But I felt impressed to rewrite what I had already written in the journal, not to copy, but I'm getting clarity on this lesson that I had written in my journal. And I felt really, really impressed to write out this new perspective and flesh out what I had written in the book. And I did that on my phone. And a part of me was like, oh, this is time wasting. I already have it down on paper. Why do I have to type it again? But I just really felt like I needed to do it, and I did. So at night when I realized, I got home to my family and I realized that my journal was on the plane, I immediately, because I didn't allow my mind to follow the path that had been previously marked out for it, which is frustration and all of that stuff, I intentionally checked how do I retrieve my lost property from the plane, and I did the email, and I did everything that I was supposed to do. Because of how precious these things are to me, I always have my name, my address, my social media, not address, my email address, my name, my social media handle, and my phone number on every new journal. I typically don't take them out of the house, but often from time to time I do. So just in case, I have it on there. So I prayed that whoever finds it will return it to me. And I emailed a picture of it to the airport and did all the stuff I needed to do. But at the same time, I felt a sense of peace. What was interesting about the peace was it wasn't peace that it was going to be returned, but it was peace that it was going to be okay. So that's one lesson, which was don't allow your thoughts to go in the direction it has always gone. Be more intentional about what you think about, what you allow your mind to process. Because whatever you think about creates an emotion, and our emotions drive our actions, period. So that was one. The second thing was that this is a lesson I started learning about a month ago, where if you have been listening to these diary entries, or if you have been listening to my podcast, Living Inside Out, you'd know that I have alluded to or said that I've had a challenging season in the last few months, right? And my expectation, especially as a Christian woman, was that these challenges were not supposed to be there. That whatever it is I'm going through, my job is to pray it away, get rid of it, and make sure that it's not present, because I'm not supposed to experience this. But you see, challenges have such a clarifying effect on the mind. And if your mind is open to learning, or you have developed the habit of learning life lessons, you will learn the lesson that your challenge or your obstacle is teaching you. So I could now see I'm going to talk about this in the next episode of Living Inside Out, because it's so rich and so much, and I don't want you to miss out on it. But in a nutshell, I had to accept that challenges are a normal part of life, and the presence of a challenge does not mean you've missed your way. And also, it is actually possible for you to be going through a hard time and for everything to also be okay. It's possible for everything to be going wrong and everything to be going right at exactly the same time. It's not one or the other. So what that means in practical terms is that I can lose my journal on the plane and I can pray for it to be returned. and it will not be returned, but I will still have the benefits and I will still have the growth that I was supposed to have as though I had the journal. And the experience will also grow me, raise me, cause me to evolve. The next day I get a phone call from an unknown Nigerian number, and I'm super excited, like they found my journal. So I call the number back, no answer, and I send a text, and the person replies, "Who is this?" You can hear the anger and the irritation and the no nonsense accent on the phone. "Who is this?" And I reply, "My name is Tokes, and I missed a call from you." And the reply was, "I don't know you and I don't have your number. How could I have called you?" That was my wake-up call. So, long and short, I still don't have my journal. I pray that it gets returned, but I'm also absolutely fine if I don't get it. I hope this blessed you. Let me know your thoughts and comments. And Living Inside Out, you really don't want to miss out on that podcast. It is everything, because not only do I share more in-depth stuff like this, my thought processes and life lessons, and I'm quite open and authentic on it as well, but I also have the most amazing guests. My latest episode as at today, which is a Thursday, is episode 73, where I interview Celia Tokes and her adorable teenage daughters. I loved recording that episode, but I loved watching it back even more. And I don't always watch stuff back, but I watched this one back and I was really blessed by it. And it was full of lessons. It was full of giggles. It was a fun interview, and you just fall in love with the family. So click the link in my bio or head to any podcast app and click and find Living Inside Out with Tokes. Better still, go on YouTube and look for Living Inside Out or Tokes Aruture and watch it, because it's even more fun when you see their beautiful faces. Have a lovely day, and I will talk to you soon.